Welcome to this explainer on India's hidden diabetes epidemic, the biological legacy. Now, if I were to ask you what's actually driving this massive health crisis, you'd probably say, well, it's all this modern junk food, right? Too much sugar, sitting at a desk all day. And hey, you wouldn't be entirely wrong. But here's the thing, that is only half the story. The real root cause of this epidemic isn't just what's sitting on our plates today. It is actually a hidden biological legacy that's deeply, deeply tied to our history. So we're going to explore how a truly devastating past essentially rewired our biology, and more importantly, what the data says we can do about it today. Okay, let's dive into this stark contrast, because it really sets up the central mystery here. On one side, we have the grim reality of 1943, a starving pregnant mother during the tragic Bengal famine, literally just struggling to keep her unborn child alive. On the other side, fast forward 80 years to 2024. We've got a 35-year-old IT professional sitting in a nice, air-conditioned office, grabbing a burger for lunch. Outwardly, this modern worker has absolutely no shortage of food. In fact, there's a total abundance of it. But modern science reveals something absolutely astonishing. Biologically speaking, that modern IT worker's body is still fighting the famine of 1943. Now, to understand how this historical trauma is somehow dictating our modern health, we first need to grasp the sheer scale of the crisis we're facing right now. 10.1 crore. Let that number sink in for a second. According to a massive 2023 survey done jointly by the prestigious medical journal The Lancet and the Indian Council of Medical Research, over 10.1 crore Indians are currently living with diabetes. This isn't just some abstract statistic on a page. These are our family members, our friends, our coworkers. India is frequently called the diabetes capital of the world, and this explosive number absolutely proves that this is an immediate, critical health emergency. But as staggering as that number is, the next piece of data is actually even more concerning. Right now, today, there are 13.6 crore Indians in the pre-diabetic stage. Guys, this is literally a ticking time bomb. We're talking about individuals who haven't fully crossed over into the disease yet, but they are standing right on the threshold. If sweeping lifestyle changes aren't made immediately, these 13.6 crore people will soon transition into full-blown diabetics, bringing just an unimaginable burden to the healthcare system. And when we talk about a burden, we have to talk about the financial devastation. For an average Indian family, if one person develops diabetes, an estimated 64% of their total income is swallowed up by medical costs. Just think about that. Out of every 100 rupees earned, 64 rupees go straight to doctor visits, blood tests, and daily medications. In a country where a huge portion of the population still lacks comprehensive health insurance, this disease doesn't just destroy bodies. It bankrupts entire families. So how in the world did we get here? Well, it basically comes down to what scientists call an evolutionary mismatch. Historically, India faced catastrophic famines, like the Deccan famine in 1876 and the Bengal famine in 1943. And the source material points out that these weren't just natural droughts. They were largely man-made disasters driven by British-era policies, heavy taxation, and grain hoarding. So for generations, Indian bodies were forced to adapt to severe starvation. But then, suddenly, the timeline shifts. The 1960s Green Revolution brought agricultural abundance, and by the 1990s, economic liberalization flooded the market with ultra-processed junk food, refined oils, and sugary drinks. So in an evolutionary blink of an eye, our bodies went from profound starvation to this massive, overwhelming calorie overload. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding exactly how the body reacted to those famines. And this brings us to the thrifty phenotype, a concept introduced by researcher David Barker back in 1992. Remember that starving pregnant mother from our earlier example? Her unborn baby actually senses the severe lack of food in the environment and alters its own biological programming right there in the womb. The baby's body essentially becomes a miser. It learns that food is incredibly scarce, so it programs itself to never ever waste a single drop of energy, storing every possible calorie as fat just to survive the harsh environment it expects to be born into. Back then, this was an incredible biological blessing that kept our ancestors alive. But today, amidst a flood of calories, it's a curse. But you might be wondering, how did a survival mechanism from the 1940s get passed down to us today? The answer lies in epigenetics. It's actually a pretty simple concept if you think of your DNA as the hardware of a computer. That hardware stays basically the same across generations. Epigenetics, however, is the software. It dictates which programs run and which ones shut down. Generations of extreme famine added a literal chemical tag to our ancestors' DNA known as DNA methylation.
This software update permanently turned on the genes that aggressively store fat, and it turned off the genes that easily burn energy. And this biological memory was passed from parents to children straight down to us today.
Because of this genetic software, Indians process fat very differently from populations in the West. This leads to what's known as the thin fat phenotype, or the Asian Indian phenotype. Now, in places like America or Europe, obesity is usually highly visible, right? The fat is stored externally under the skin. But Indians can appear entirely thin and healthy on the outside, while dangerously hoarding invisible fat on the inside. This is called visceral fat. It wraps itself tightly around vital internal organs like the liver, the intestines, and the pancreas. So you might look perfectly fit on the outside, but inside, your organs could literally be suffocating. Let's look at the exact mechanics of this internal fat using a simple lock and key metaphor. It's like a locked room. Step 1, you eat, and sugar enters your bloodstream, seeking to enter your cells to give you energy. Step 2, your pancreas releases insulin. Think of insulin as the keys meant to unlock your cell's doors. Step 3, that dangerous visceral fat we just talked about secretes toxic chemicals that actually act like rust on your cellular locks. So the keys no longer work. The sugar is locked out and remains trapped, just dangerously floating around in your bloodstream. And because these cellular locks are rusted shut by visceral fat, the sugar stays trapped in the blood. This is the condition we know as insulin resistance. Seeing all this floating sugar, your pancreas goes into a total panic and starts churning out more and more insulin, desperately trying to force those rusted doors open. Over time, this constant overwork completely exhausts the pancreas, leading to beta cell dysfunction. Basically, the machinery simply tires out and breaks down, which cements diabetes permanently into the body. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this uniquely Indian biological mechanism stacks up against the rest of the world. Yes, China has more total diabetics, mostly just due to sheer population size, and the USA has a high percentage driven by visible obesity. But look at India's growth rate. In just the 4 years between 2019 and 2023, India saw an explosive, world-leading 44% surge in diabetes cases. Because of our unique thin fat phenotype, the disease is accelerating here faster than anywhere else on the planet. It is literally threatening to make us the global leader in total cases very, very soon.
And the ripple effects of this rapid growth are turning into a demographic nightmare. First off, it's a silent killer. A staggering 57% of Indian diabetics have absolutely no idea they are even sick, which allows the disease to quietly ruin their kidneys, eyes, and hearts in the background. Second, this is no longer just an old person's disease. It is aggressively targeting the 30 to 40-year-old demographic, which is the most productive engine of the nation's workforce. And geographically? While highly urbanized, educated states like Goa and Kerala are already saturated with cases, heavily populated developing states like UP, MP, and Bihar are sitting on a massive, looming surge of pre-diabetics just waiting to cross the line as their economies modernize.
I know. All of this data can feel incredibly grim. It sounds like we're fighting a biological war programmed by our history, right? But as this famous medical adage perfectly states, genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. Yes, for sure, our tragic history loaded the weapon. Our bodies are primed to store fat, but the gun cannot fire unless we choose to pull the trigger through poor modern dietary habits and sedentary lifestyles. We actually have the power to keep our fingers off that trigger. And the source data gives us clear, actionable ways to do exactly that, starting right now. The very first hack is practically magic, and the best part is, it costs absolutely nothing. It's simply changing the sequence of how you eat your food. Indians traditionally eat their carbs, like roti or rice, first. But the data shows we need to flip the script entirely. Step 1. Start your meal with fiber, like a large portion of raw veggies or a salad. Step 2. Move on to protein, like dal, paneer, or eggs. Step 3. Eat your carbohydrates last. By eating in this exact sequence, you drastically slow down the digestion process. This prevents a sudden massive spike of sugar in your blood, giving your pancreas plenty of time to release insulin gently without getting totally exhausted.
The second incredibly effective lifestyle shift takes just 10 to 15 minutes of your time. It's a simple walk immediately after every meal. When you walk right after eating, your leg muscles become active and require instant energy. And fascinatingly, these working muscles can soak up the excess sugar floating in your bloodstream without even needing insulin to unlock the doors. This bypasses the whole rusted lock problem entirely, gives your pancreas a massive break, and directly stops that dangerous visceral fat from building up around your organs. It's a real game changer.
But as the data clearly suggests, individuals cannot win this fight alone. The environment around us absolutely has to change. Governments must step up to tackle this public health emergency. This means implementing health taxes on the ultra-processed, factory-made foods and sugary drinks that are just flooding the market right now. It also means fundamentally redesigning our urban spaces. We desperately need cities with safe, walkable infrastructure and ample public parks so that choosing to walk actually becomes safer and easier than choosing to drive. We have to design an environment that encourages movement rather than punishing it.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. Will we let the famines of our history dictate the future of our health? Our genetics might be programmed for a world of starvation that no longer exists, but our genes do not have to be our destiny. By understanding the biological legacy we carry, by changing how we eat, by simply moving our bodies, and by demanding healthier environments, we can stop this silent killer in its tracks. We can keep our finger off the trigger. The choice of what we do next, armed with this knowledge, is entirely up to us.